My name is Evin Dogu, and I am one of the owners of Sub Rosa Bakery, and I'm also a baker here. Hey, welcome to Sub Rosa Bakery, Richmond's only wood-fired retail bakery. This is the front of house area where customers can sit down and enjoy their coffee and pastries. This is our front of house barista area with our awesome espresso machine. This oven was the first thing built in this building once we took over. It's a wood-fired oven, and there's two decks. There's a top deck and a bottom deck. We bake all our pastries in the bottom deck and all our breads in the top deck. So my dad moved to the States in his late 20s. He was actually a really sort of well-known musician, part of a band in Turkey, but he said that since he was a child, he always had his eyes set on moving abroad. So he moved in the 70s. So I was born in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, and lived there for 14 years. So a lot of my formative years were there. My dad had a chain of pizza restaurants in Louisiana, very successful, but I think that he was kind of a little burning out of having so many restaurants. And my mom really wanted to be closer to her mother, who lives in Ohio. So my mom really wanted to go to Ohio. My dad didn't want to go to Ohio, so a nice compromise was Virginia. And then my family moved to Northern Virginia in '94, went to high school in Northern Virginia, and then college in Virginia as well, and then landed in Richmond. And then my brother started making really good bread. As he saw the demand for the bread and how excited people were and how excited he was about it, he thought, well, I want to open a storefront. And that's kind of where I came in to the picture, yeah. Evrim and I both had different domains that we were in charge of. I think that really helped a lot. Evrim was in charge of the bread, and I was in charge of pastry. We've been very lucky with developing our team. A lot of the bakers have sought us out. We've had people who have very little experience but have come to us, and we can just tell that they enjoy good food and are gonna do great, at the bakery. Richmond has been an amazing place to start a business. Between the journalists in Richmond and just customers sending us letters and emails about how much they appreciate what we do. I mean, we get so much appreciation. And that's another thing I feel so lucky about, because so many people work so hard and it doesn't get recognized and appreciated, but that has not been the case with us. And Richmond's food scene has started to, for a while now, kind of blossom, and it's just pretty serendipitous. So our food definitely has a global perspective, in the sense that because my brother and I have parents who are Turkish immigrants, we grew up with Turkish cuisine, and so we enjoy the cuisine, and we did want it to be featured a little bit in our pastries. I wouldn't say we're a Turkish bakery, but we have some Turkish-inspired dishes. Cherry pistachio croissant, the seeded pide, the lamb burdak, and these little poğaças that my grandmother taught me how to make, which is a Turkish pastry with feta cheese. All have definitely inspired us. And I think in general, growing up in a Turkish-American background and being between two cultures, we've been lucky enough to kind of have a more global perspective. There are definitely challenges to running a business. I actually want to say, even though there's been probably the same challenges that most business owners have, I do feel super lucky that we have a staff that shows up consistently on time. They care about the bakery. We don't really have a lot of drama here. Everyone works hard. I feel like a lot of the things that I've heard other friends say, I just can't relate to, because we just haven't had many issues with staff or running the business. It's more just been how do we work a little less and have a life outside of the bakery? Yeah.
Hi, and welcome to the Potluck Series. I'm here today with Evin Dogu, and she is the co-owner and the head pastry chef at Sub Rosa Bakery in Richmond, Virginia. And we want to thank the American Center in Moscow for this opportunity to come and talk and get to know an amazing woman doing some amazing things. So Evim, that was an awesome intro. What a cool life you've had. Tell us a little bit about, we just saw, the kind of like the highlights of the main things of your life. I want to know how you got into pastry, like specifically. Were you already doing that when Evrim, your brother, started baking? Tell me a little bit about the development and your evolving into that role.
Yeah, so my involvement into the role was honestly just eating a lot of it. Avid lover of dessert and flaky pastry. I have memories of being a kid and eating grocery store croissants or little puff pastries with chicken, just grocery store style, that stuck with me. And traveling to Turkey every summer with my family and going to bakeries there and just kind of exposed me to a lot of different types of pastries and the bakery culture. And once Evrim, my brother, started making bread and wanted to open a business in Richmond, kind of one thing led to another. And I thought, well, if I can eat this many pastries, can I make this many? And I worked at a bakery for free as an apprentice in the DC area while I was working at my dad's restaurant doing front of house stuff. And after even just a couple weeks there, I was like, I think I can handle this. So a little unconventional, I guess, in some ways, but maybe we all start just by kind of following our heart and sticking to what we love and dream about, which for me is
it's so amazing. That's so cool. So your education was really hands-on, like apprenticeship.
Yeah, it was. I'll never forget. There was a baker whose class I took through this popular spot in America called Sur la Table. It's like a kitchen store, but they do classes. And she was very talented. I just took a 3-hour course with her one evening and I got her advice. And she said, there's 2 paths to take. You can go to a culinary school or you can just become an apprentice and work at different bakeries. They're always looking for free labor because it's so much work. I don't know if she actually said that, but I came to find that out. So yes, I ended up just working at a few different bakeries as an apprentice to kind of learn a little bit more about the day-to-day not operations, but the day-to-day tasks and everything that I would need to learn to actually open a bakery myself with my brother.
And I know that bakeries and restaurants are different, but you grew up in a restaurant, basically. Is that right?
Yeah, we did. My father has been a restaurateur for over 40 years. He's retired now, but he had a chain of pizza restaurants called Sicily's Pizza. And ever since I can remember, honestly, we would go eat there only once a week. My mom wanted to make sure to not overdo it with the pizza, but we'd go once a week. We would help out at the pizza. Actually, I think we started helping out more when my dad opened his restaurants in the DC area. Back then when we were kids, we would just go all the time, but we were exposed to the restaurant just by being around him and his coworkers. And yeah.
That's really, it's beautiful. It's such a cool way to come into a career. Kind of like a very essential way. So I know very little Russian, almost none. But I remember the word for bread in Russian is chleb. And I think it sounds like such a cool, like essential, like word, I mean, that's just my perspective as hearing it. But how do you say bread in Turkish?
Bread, good question. That's a rarely get asked that. Ekmek.
Ekmek.
Ekmek, yeah. And I wish I knew the origin more. I feel like there's probably a lot behind the word, but it's a great word. It's easy to say. And actually, there's a phrase in Turkish called ekmek parası, which is bread money. And it's the minimal amount of money one needs to survive. because we all survive on bread is sort of the idea.
Yeah. I mean, that's the thing that's so fascinating to me is that bread, every culture, even places that don't have wheat as their, main crop, for example, places that are rice based, and everybody has some form of bread that they make with the grains available to them, basically, which is so, I mean, it's not everyone maybe, but like so much of the world. So there's this really essential universal thing about bread, that it's just this beautiful thing. So can you tell us a little bit about what makes the Sub Rosa bread and pastry different and special? Like you mentioned in your video that like your oven is fire, right? You don't have an electric oven. And that you said something about it being stone ground. Can you just explain what those things really mean?
Sure, I will. Yeah, I think what kind of makes our bread special is doing what people did for thousands of years before the invention of mass production and industrialization. So we're just kind of going back to the original ways of making bread by using flour that we mill ourselves in a stone mill, and by baking in a wood-fired oven. The stone mill, freshly milled flour in our bread just gives it a lot more character, and I think it creates more flavor where you can really understand what the wheat is that you're eating. It allows us to work with farmers that are close by in Virginia and Pennsylvania. And the oven, I would say, sort of is the magic of the place. I don't know that we would need to necessarily always bake in a wood-fired oven, let's say if we had a second or third location. But originally the idea was my brother's, because that's the kind of oven that my dad used for his pizzas in his restaurants in Virginia. And that's also the oven people used for centuries. It does have an allure to it, just looking at it, and baking with it and interacting with it as a baker definitely makes it more exciting to be at work. It's a very active process. One baker I worked with once said he felt like it was an Olympic sport working with our oven, because you have to step up a lot and move the peels in and out. You have to adjust your baking based on the heat that day. So anyway, that's a long answer, I think, to your question.
No, that's good. That's what I wanted. I think, because I think sometimes when we are as specialized as you guys are, some terms sound very, commonplace or self-explanatory, and they're not, because you guys are so deep in the industry. And as far as like really the art of bread baking, it's fascinating to think about it from a practical point of view. What does that mean? What does it look like every day? So can you tell us a little bit like what a normal day looks like for you?
For me particularly, or for like any of the bakers that?
Let's say for you, because your role is a little bit more specialized or very specialized, I guess.
Yeah. So until recently, my day kind of looked like most of the other bakers that we work with day, except maybe just getting asked more questions from front of house, or from contractors, or from delivery people. Until last year, my brother and I were in the kitchen full time, which means at least 10 hours, sometimes 12 hours.
How many years would that be?
10 years.
10 years of 10 to 12-hour days.
Yeah, I would say, yeah. And actually, until about 5 years ago, we also had night duties because of the wood-fired oven. Someone has to keep tending to the oven. You can't just leave it when the day is done. So we would have to go back 3 or 4 times after our day was done, check on the fire, feed the starters, put the breads back into the refrigeration because we would proof them overnight. So we don't do any of that anymore. But now my average, except for the holidays, the past month has been a lot of kitchen work. But yeah, now my days are a little less intense. I still work in the kitchen at least 2 or 3 times a week. But then the other 2 days I can do administrative work. I can go to the mill and mill flour, which is a lot more of a passive role, I guess, or passive work compared to kitchen work, although you're still doing a lot of heavy lifting and scooping. But yeah, so it's a little bit of administrative stuff, a little bit of baking. When I'm in the kitchen, you starts at 6 a.m. and you are just mixing dough, sheeting out dough, creating butter packs for croissant, doing lots of production work, trying to spend 5 minutes eating lunch, and then going home around 4 or 5.
Okay. What time do you usually fall asleep at night?
Oh, good question. I try to fall asleep between 10 and 11 p.m. And now that I don't start until 6 a.m., that seems pretty healthy.
Yeah.
I used to be actually, now my role in the kitchen is just in the back of house, doing mixing work and shaping. It used to be in front of the oven, and that shift starts at 3 in the morning. So I don't do that anymore. I can't. I can't wake up at those hours anymore.
That's incredible. It's just such a consuming profession, right?
It really is. I mean, baking and bakery work is a labor of love. Some of the hardest people I've met in my entire life are the bakers that either work at Sub Rosa or other bakeries I've visited. Yeah.
So where did you guys come up with the name Sub Rosa? How did that name come about?
That is all my brother Evrim. He came up with that name. I think as the story goes, when he was in college, used to get a word a day. You can subscribe to something and they send you a new vocabulary word every day. And the word Sub Rosa stuck with him. It means secrecy or under the rose. And years later, when he was trying to think about a name for his bakery before I came along, he remembered that word, Sub Rosa, and thought, well, how perfect would it be to have the bakery named this? Because here I am, I'm speaking as my brother right now. He's a lot funnier than me, but here I am, like going to my dad's oven, baking breads. This is before Sub Rosa. He would bake breads in my dad's oven 3 hours away, drive back with the bread and sell it at the farmer's market here. And to even be able to get the bread, you had to be on a subscription list. Mm-hmm. So it was all very secret. And since Sub Rosa means kind of secrecy, he thought, well, this is a great name that has to do with the origin story of the bakery.
Oh, I love that. I didn't realize that. I remember those days. I'm lucky enough to live in the same town, and I get to have Sub Rosa bread all the time and pastries. And it's the best. It's just incredible. It felt like a real game changer when you guys started the bakery. Actually, it felt like it gave other people in Richmond the courage to try to make a food scene here. I think you guys were really some of the pioneers to really make Richmond what it is today, which is a town with great food. So I'm thankful for you guys trying such a crazy experiment. I really wanted to hear, you mentioned something about how you've been working more kitchen hours in the holidays. And we talked a little bit about your upbringing as the really like a first generation child here. Mm-hmm. I'd love to hear more about your childhood kind of and growing up in the South as a Turkish family, Turkish American. And I really would love to know about holidays, because I think this is something that makes me really happy is when the holidays are really a big amalgam of whatever our influences have been. And, yours are very diverse, very wide, but that doesn't make them invalid, right? Like they're just because they're not like some pure idea of what that is. I think that it's more beautiful, actually. So tell us about holidays growing up for you through this lens of really being kind of a little bit third culture, right? I mean, having a family from one culture, living in another culture, and being somewhere in between. I'm sure that's influenced. I mean, it's really, I don't want to talk too much here, but your dad's pizza place was called Sicily. That made me laugh a little bit. And here you guys, as a Turkish American brother and sister family, have this bakery, and you're selling panettone too. So it's tell us about how all this jumbled up stuff fits together in your life. How does it?
Yeah, great. Yeah, this is a great question. Don't think we've really been asked to kind of dig too deep into all of that. So thank you for bringing that up. Yeah, we were really lucky. I mean, we grew up in Louisiana. It's just kind of I guess you could call it a happy coincidence that panettone is a specialty we make at the bakery, but also my dad had this pizza restaurant called Sicily's. His partner happened to be from Sicily, or his family happened to be from Sicily. So that was the story behind that. But yeah, there is definitely a love for Italian cuisine in our family. I mean, probably a lot of families around the world. They really do know how to make good food, and they love it, the passion. But yeah, we were really lucky. Our parents, and especially I think my mom, made an active decision that she wanted us to not feel left out during the holidays, especially during Christmas. I think her parents and family didn't really pay much attention or buy Christmas trees or all the fun things that Americans do. And she didn't want us to be left out. So I definitely always felt like part of everything growing up during the holidays. And I remember kind of realizing that our Christmas dinner or Thanksgiving dinner was a little different than my friends, because we would have like the turkey, but then we'd have like a Turkish side dish with currants and pine nuts, or like a stewed green bean dish or an eggplant dish. And yeah, eventually I was like, oh, other families don't have these dishes. So I grew to love it because it was like the best of both worlds. And I would just say in general, the experience of having two cultures, at least for me, has just been kind of that idea of the best of two worlds. I mean, you get all the benefits of the American culture and the holidays and the sharing and joy and celebration with all those of Turkish, which are similar, but and sometimes you get double holidays because you can celebrate both. But yeah, in terms of food traditions and we didn't have a lot of dessert traditions that I can remember over the holidays. The panettone is interesting. It's something we make at Sub Rosa now, and we have since we started. But that I give credit. I didn't even know what that was until I was studying abroad in Italy when I was 20. And my friend Serena brought me a box of panettone. And I just thought it was like the most beautiful, cool thing I'd ever seen. It's tall and it's got colorful candied fruits and raisins. And it was just a store-bought one, but I still thought it was amazing. It had a great shelf life. We could eat it for weeks at a time. So when my brother wanted to make it, I was pretty excited. He was in charge of it for years. And then we have a baker who's with us now named Addie, who kind of took the lead once she started 4 or 5 years ago and really spearheaded the panettone we make today, which is just incredible. It's all naturally leavened. We candy the orange ourselves. So even though I never had that tradition of panettone growing up, I'm very excited that it's part of my life and Sub Rosa's life now.
Yeah, I think that's one thing I love about, it's one of the things I really think is the best part about being an American, is that you do get surrounded by so many people from so many different cultures that you really get to kind of, if you want, I mean, my family, because our neighbors are from France, we started making like the bûche de Noël every year for Christmas, because we never heard of that. And it sounded so fun and so cool. And so I think that I love that you can incorporate traditions from all over the world. And I think any of us can do that if they speak to us or move us, So tell me, you mentioned a couple of the pastries that you learned to make at home, like from your grandparents, you said. Mm-hmm. Tell us a little bit more about some of those like really formative memories of working with bread or working with pastry, or some of these things that you really carried from it sounds like childhood.
Yeah. I mean, I like maybe many Turkish people, I'm very lucky that everyone in my family just happens to be a really good cook. We grew up around such good food. My mom is an excellent cook. My dad, excellent cook. My 2 grandmothers, wow. I would say baking wise, I've been told that my father's mother, who I did get to see throughout my childhood, she's the one who lived in Turkey. She was known as an avid and very skilled baker. And I do remember eating, again, not helping, but eating her pastries. She would make böreğs, which are very common, not just in Turkey, but in other neighboring countries as well. Layers of phyllo dough with ground meat or feta cheese and parsley. She would always have something in her freezer that she had made and she would pull out. My maternal grandmother, who lives in Ohio, to this day, she still, even though she might not be cooking herself, will direct us from the couch and tell us what to do and what seasoning to add. But she did actually directly influence our pocha pastry that we sell at the bakery. She said it was a recipe a friend gave her a while back, and we made it together. Before the bakery opened, I was visiting her, and we made the dough together. We made the filling. We assembled them together, and now at Sub Rosa, we make and sell them. They're very popular. And then I would just say, in general, just eating delicious pizza from my dad's restaurant and my mom's cooking combined, just I think allowed us to develop our palates and our love for food and good food.
So with that, when you have a really strong concept of what you're trying to bring to the public, and like you said, baking is really a labor of love. What would be some of the main challenges that you think you guys have faced, or that you faced personally, or let's talk about some of the things that have been a little bit hard, surprised you maybe, or that you kind of expected, but you knew you'd have to work through.
Yeah, so I think the biggest challenge is maintaining creativity in an already very busy schedule. The products that we make are very popular and they sell and people want them. So to spend extra time trying to create new ones is challenging. I always think about it, but actually executing it has been pretty challenging. Sometimes just the physical nature of manual labor. I love it. I mean, I don't know any other work in a way. I've always worked on my feet, but as I've gotten older, that can be challenging. For bakers, for me, especially the sleeping, it's just hard to sleep like a normal person when you have to be up all hours of the night. That has been challenging. And then I guess just, knowing what to focus on and when to focus on it. So do I try my best to just be a fellow co-baker and do all the production? But then when I do that, sometimes the administrative stuff gets ignored. So I guess balancing those things and knowing how to prioritize, especially as someone like me, I'm already kind of distractible. So I find myself sometimes just getting sidetracked. So staying on course, that can be a challenge.
It's really interesting. It made me think about, I'm a musician and I've been in several bands for a long time, and there's a great energy that comes from starting and excitement about doing new material. And then once you kind of have a repertoire after years and years together, it's really hard to produce new repertoire because you can really rest on some of those things. But the energy of the creativity is what really kind of keeps you engaged in a meaningful way.
Yeah, it really does. And it's just so hard to actually implement that. We do and we have, but certainly not as much as we had, or at least as much as I had hoped to. It's not too late.
I mean, it seems like you're always having something awesome. I always am seeing something I want to go buy.
Thank you. And the big, working with other bakers, I mean, the collaboration aspect of things. And every time there's a new baker or even a baker that's been with us for a while, their creativity could definitely fuel me and inspire me. Sometimes it's easier to pull from that than from your own desire or, yeah.
Have you guys been surprised by the success and like the awards and the attention that you've gotten?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I think maybe like most people in life, you pick a job or a career and you just do your best with it, and then all of a sudden, it's amazing and very surprising to just hear compliments and like great feedback. Definitely didn't expect it. It excites me that people are as excited as I am about eating good food. So I love that part of it. I guess that part's not surprising. I know how people react to good food. I've just seen it my whole life. But yeah, the fact that it's become as popular and we have so many fans, I've heard that's wonderful and very, it means a lot.
So I know we've talked about like family and memories and culture and all these things, and how so much of that for you, and I think for a lot of us, is centered around food. Can you talk a little bit more about what you hope that you guys are able to accomplish for other people to make their traditions centered around what you guys are producing? Someone talking in a few years at an interview about how every Christmas they would go get a Sub Rosa panettone, and that was the thing that everybody looked forward to. I mean, those are really significant markers in people's lives. So talk a little bit about that, because it's a little bit more philosophical, a little bit of a zoomed out idea, but it's real.
Yeah, it is real. I would say that I hope that we can help create a stronger food culture and continue to be part of a system or part of a group of people that changes the way we eat, or maybe improves the way we eat in America. We have a lot of mass-produced food. Sometimes it's necessary. I'm not hating on it, but we have the ability, if there's enough people that are interested, to have healthier, more sustainable food. And if more and more people could open high-quality bakeries, even within Richmond, even within Churchill, I would love it. I would go. I would support it. I guess what I think my brother as well, and definitely what I hope, is that, more and more people are drawn to support this style of bakery and restaurant by either patronizing or opening something themselves. I hope we really continue to support our farmers markets and realize like what important and hard work farmers are doing. I know I said earlier in the conversation that the hardest working people I've ever been around are bakers, but I need to add that farmers might trump that. I guess I just hope that we can make a light bulb go off for people, and that people get why we're doing what we're doing, and that they can just, can not only continue supporting us and our bakery, but go on to do this similar things, and like that, just that it spreads even more. It's already really improved. I think we have in America a lot of not just potential, but amazing things happening in food. And I just hope that it just continues to evolve in a positive way. Yeah.
One thing that I just would love to make really clear, in case people watching don't understand, that so the most of food production in the United States is industrialized, and was chronically and probably to our detriment very much. And in the last maybe 30 years, there have been a lot of movement towards organic and smaller food, eating local, to trying to minimize our carbon footprint in food production. But something that's fascinating to me that you guys have done is that you're able to support small farmers who are raising grains that aren't available commercially anymore. Could you talk a little bit about that, just to give us, because I think that's a really important piece of all this that makes it fit into the big network of just food production, like what you were just talking about?
Yeah, sure. And my brother is definitely a little bit more in charge and knowledgeable about the grain. So I probably won't be able to get too specific, but I can just say that a lot of the farmers we work with are growing heirloom grains. They're organic. They're grains that like einkorn or spelt have been around for thousands and thousands of years. They are growing it on a smaller scale, but large enough to be able to deliver or ship to us. They are in Virginia and Pennsylvania. They are also doing trials where they're testing certain wheats out, working with bakers and other people who might need their grain to try to create and grow the kind of grains that we would use. But yeah, I mean, we're able to not only get wheat, but also rye and specific wheats, which I guess traditionally were around, but then kind of got lost and now are being sort of revived through these farmers.
That's so amazing.
Yeah, there's actually a cool organization that a lot of millers and farmers are part of called the Common Grain Alliance, and they're doing a lot in this realm, trying to bring together the bakers and the millers and the farmers to try to help improve the grain economy and sustain it.
Well, I know we're going to get some questions in just a few minutes. And if you have any questions, please feel free to send them our way. We'd love to let Evin field anything you might be curious about. But I did have a couple of quick questions about food for you.
Sure.
If you were going to go out and just create your very best, your most, not maybe your last meal, because that feels a little morbid, but if you were going to go out and just have your most favorite meal, like tell me what it would include.
I would have to say that manta is just a wonderful kind of dumpling that we make in Turkey, for lack of a better word, with ground lamb inside and a yogurt sauce. We would make it as a family once or twice a year. I'm surprised I forgot to bring it up when we were talking about baked goods, just because it is like a flour-based dough. But that is like my favorite food. Probably not only because it's tasty, but the memory of making it with all my family members is just so strong. So manta would be at the top of the list. I love pizza. Maybe manta and pizza, all things,
yes.
all carbs. Gosh, a big, delicious salad. That would also be in there. So
what would your salad have?
Salad, I think, at the end of the day. What's that? Sorry.
Tell me what your salad would have. What would you use to make your salad?
I love combining like a hearty green like kale with mixed greens, and then maybe a romaine type lettuce. Ideally from Tompton Farm, which is our friend's farm an hour away, and then a really delicious like vinegar, olive oil, mustardy dressing, and a little bit of Parmesan cheese. Probably that's it.
That sounds amazing.
Yeah.
I'm starving now.
Yeah.
All right. And my other food question for you specifically is what, if you're going to eat some trash, everybody has the trash that they love. Tell me what yours is.
I have so many. I really do. I don't know if I should be admitting this in front of all these people, but I love popcorn. I could probably eat it almost every day. I love junk candy. I don't purchase it, but if other people in my life do, I will definitely eat it. And chips, pretty much any kind of chips. Like when they ask you in America, like you get a sandwich and they always or a burger, and they always ask what side you want. And even though there's healthy options, I always want the chips.
Well, I know that we talked about, it sounds like it's been a pretty organic development of your role at Sub Rosa and just your becoming a pastry chef, and really part owner of this bakery. So with all of the administrative work and everything you've had to do, you wear a lot of hats, and it's pretty amazing. But and I know your specific path has been a little bit different because it all happened in the context of your family, with your father, with your mother, your grandmother teaching you things, and then even your brother going into business. But can you talk a little bit about being a woman and what that looks like in this field? Maybe things that other people face that you haven't had to, even because of that specific kind of way that you came into the business. I'd love to hear your perspective.
Sure. Yeah. I think personally, I've been pretty lucky overall. I haven't had too many challenges that I faced as a woman. I have worked with my father at his restaurants and then co-owner of our bakery with my brother. So I haven't had really faced too much discrimination in that way. There was a weird period in the beginning that was challenging because for some reason, I think people forgot that the bakery was owned by me and my brother, and I would just get left out of awards and recognition. But that slowly changed as the bakery continued to prosper. And I think people, once honestly, I think a lot of it was also that I wasn't in front of the oven in the first handful of years. So I think once people actually visibly saw me, they're like, oh yeah, she's part of this operation too. So that was a little challenging, or I would say just like a little frustrating. But other than that, I haven't had too many issues. I know that, both in America, we've all heard on the news with the Me Too movement. I mean, the restaurant industry was an industry that women were definitely calling out a lot of their male coworkers and bosses. I know that there's sexual discrimination and harassment for sure in restaurant life, I've heard. Thankfully, I've never experienced it, but I think it's improving. And I think now that, women are coming out and telling their stories and people are realizing they can't get away with that behavior, it's much better. But yeah, thankfully, it's been pretty fair for me.
That's wonderful. We have a few questions coming in, so I'm gonna shift to let you have some time to answer these. I love this first question. What dishes from international cuisine? And this was actually another question I had. I can ask that later if there's time. But what would you advise for people to try to cook or order on Christmas Eve? Let's start with that one.
If they were in America going to a restaurant, or
I think just like from maybe if you were going to say this is a really cool tradition, or anything internationally that you know about, anything Turkish maybe that's like, I know that,
yeah. Well,
American and not Russian maybe. Since those.
Gosh, now I'm drawing a blank. I know that I think, the like a bouillabaisse or a paella or just something that takes a lot of work that you wouldn't normally do. Yeah. That's delicious and that is just tried and true. That would be my recommendation. There's
high labor.
Yeah, I don't know why. Yeah, I immediately go to high labor. I guess it's just because it's so rare in life that we want to take the time that I would pick like one of the national dishes of a cuisine that you really love, like mole in Mexico, like making a mole.
Yeah.
I think that's why manta, I know I talked a lot about it, but it's a little bit of a labor of love, but it's kind of time consuming, but for a holiday dish, it's worth it in the end.
Yeah. And those are usually kind of rich dishes that you don't want to eat every single day. And so it makes it a little more special. So those time intensive ones that do take a little more production, I think that the holidays are a great time to try those things. Curries.
And actually, if you don't want to go that route, I was just thinking the two quickest, most delicious things I can think of are roasted chicken and whole fish.
Yeah.
Roasted chicken or whole fish is gonna, my dad would probably argue better than any complicated dish.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. There's something essential about those, and you can't go wrong. All right, what is your favorite Christmas movie, Evin? Are you a diehard person? Are you like adventure, or are you like Love Actually, or
Love Actually? I was gonna say Love Actually. I do love. Is it A Christmas Story when he gets his tongue stuck to the pole?
Yeah.
That one and Love Actually are my favorites.
So A Christmas Story is the story about a little boy remembering, or a man remembering his childhood around Christmas time, and the year all he wanted was a BB gun, right?
Yes, I think so.
And I think that's from like the 80s or 90s in the US. That's a good movie. It's called A Christmas Story. And then Love Actually is a
romantic comedy, but it's all around Christmas time, and the acting is great, and it's very heartwarming.
No Die Hard for you on Christmas Eve. You're not going to be.
What's that?
No Die Hard on Christmas for you.
No. I appreciate it. There's a time and place for that, but for me, it's not Christmas Eve.
Okay, this is a great question. What is the best part of baking today? And how do you think baking will change in the future? And this is a great question because I think of you guys as extremely creative. You're not just driven by how good the food tastes, you're driven by how beautiful it is. The whole experience of being somewhere beautiful and eating is important, I think. And so you're always forward thinking, but you guys are very tied to roots that maybe, human roots of like, this is a very essential thing to make bread, sustain life. So, and to work with farmers and things like that. So I'd love to hear you talk about your favorite parts about baking, maybe some of the technological things that make it a lot easier for you guys to do what you do. And then where do you think baking is heading?
Great. Yes. Great questions. My favorite part about baking is probably pulling out the finished product from the oven, because all the hard work that's gone into it and the fruition of seeing it and smelling it and seeing people's reaction to it. Bakeries are such warm, happy places. I mean, it's rare to see people like, I don't know, there's just like a bustle and a hustle. And I love all the excitement around baked goods. I love how relatable it is. Everybody has some experience with baking, good or bad, and such strong memories attached to it. So I love all that about it. And of course, I'll go back to what I said, that the best part about baking is getting to eat all of these delicious things all the time. It never gets old, but I would be lying if I didn't mention that is an amazing part of baking, is eating it. But no, I love actually like the act of baking in the oven and pulling out these beautiful looking creations. And then the future of baking, that's a very good question. I hope it's the continuation of these little micro bakeries that are popping up around the country, like us, that are trying to do things in the most honest, sustainable way possible. But I could see it being a divide where there's that path, and then there's the kind of even more highly mass-produced path, because our world is getting large, and maybe we need that in some way too. I don't know. But I don't think robots could take over. I do know that. But not over the kind of baking we do. So maybe there will be robots in the mass-produced side of things. But yeah, I feel like there might be a divide in the future of baking. Mm-hmm. Maybe more people doing the artisanal baking, but also more people trying to mass produce it.
Yeah. Oh, here's a great question. And this actually ties into the next question I wanted to ask you. Mm-hmm. The question from the viewers is, what beginner's advice would you give to someone learning to bake at home? But I want you to tell us that by telling us your worst fail, your worst baking fail.
For me specifically?
Yes.
Or, yeah. Gosh, my personal worst fail. Oh, I definitely is when I first started baking at Sub Rosa using the wood-fired oven. I put 7 trays of pastries. Each tray had 12 pastries. So that's 84 pastries went in the oven, and they all came out burnt. Every single one of them. And we were going to open in 1 hour. I burned 84 pastries. It was terrible. And then somebody else forgot to put salt and sugar in hundreds of croissant dough. Not my failure, but thought it was worth mentioning. Always check your salt and sugar. And then the other part of the question, advice.
Yeah, beginner's advice for someone at home.
Eat a lot of good pastry. Seriously, like I know I keep talking about that, but I think that's the way you develop your palate and know what you're going for. Know that you're going to make a lot of times you're going to have a lot of fails before you have successes. There'll be a lot of things you're either giving away to friends or throwing away. But also if you can go, if you're really serious about it in terms of becoming a professional, I do recommend the apprenticeship approach and asking to work at a bakery. There's some good books out there. The one I love is Tartine. They're a famous bakery in America. They're great. And their original book has all of their recipes are foolproof. The one that's the Tartine book, it's like the first or second one. That's a great place to start. And online resources are great. Smitten Kitchen is a good American resource.
Yeah. I think like the era of food blogging, which still continues some today. So you can find so much good information from other home chefs, people that are just doing this because they love it, not necessarily professionals.
Yeah, following them and doing. I think just picking one thing and doing it a lot. Like let's say if it's muffins for you, or I don't know, biscuits or something, or cookies. Pick one type and just keep making the same thing again and again and again, and you'll learn a lot about it, and you can then know how you might want to adjust it.
Here's another great question. Have you had to make any significant adjustments to your business model over time? In the bakery?
Yeah, great question. The biggest adjustment we had to make was during COVID. We had to completely change our store from being an in-person bakery where you would come in and sit down and relax to all online ordering, where you would just pick up your order outside. So I guess that is less specific to us and more specific to a lot of the world and adjustments they've had to make. But that's the only time we've truly had to change our business model. Other than that, and now we're back to our cafe being open. But other than that, we've kind of stuck to a similar model over the years.
And what, like in a nutshell, what is that model?
Well, we make as much as we can with the goal of selling out every day so that we minimize waste. We allow people to pre-order, but they need to do it 48 hours in advance. Let's see, what other important things? We do to-go service and in-person service. We do have wholesale accounts, a handful that we sell bread to, no pastries. We just don't have enough pastries to go around for wholesale.
There's so anything. Okay, here's a really important question. Yeah. And this might be our last one. We'll see if we have time for one more. But who was the first person to ever inspire you?
In food?
You can have multiple answers. Let's say that. But I would think, of course, we're talking about your craft. So that would be super. And I think you can have multiple answers, but.
Yeah, I mean, this is probably the answer a lot of people give, but I mean, I know it's probably supposed to be one person. I guess the first food I remember is my mother's food. She would make us our baby food from scratch. And then for some reason, this question is making me emotional.
Oh, it's a beautiful, it is emotional.
Yeah, and my dad, I mean, Yeah, my parents.
That's beautiful. Okay, here's a good question that kind of goes hand in hand with that, I think. Because you and your brother are so community minded, it's astonishing how much this felt like when Sub Rosa was opened. It felt like we all did it, even though it was like so much your work. But you made everybody feel like they were a part of it, and you do that every time you open your doors. So, can you talk a little bit, just briefly, about your community engagement?
Yeah, sure. So, yeah, we've been really lucky with our community. My brother went to college here, and he lived in this neighborhood that our bakery is in. It's called Churchill. And when he wanted to open a bakery, I think this was probably his first choice. I know he looked at a lot of different neighborhoods, but when he found the spot we're in, we decided that it had to be it. And since we've been in Churchill for 10 years, we have had so much of the community support us, both by just showing up and buying pastries and bread and coffee, but also we had a big fire and our bakery was destroyed, and we had multiple neighbors and fellow businessmen and women having fundraisers for us, and letters from kids on our door saying that, they can't wait for us to open again. So we've had a lot of support from the community. We've tried to support the community through our community loaf program that other bakers around the country have also started. And we were inspired by them to bake a handful of loaves every month. I think it's about 50 to give to people who might not have the means of coming and getting our bread. And we also have a lot of events. We've had musicians like Laura Ann come and perform at the bakery. We've had an English professor who worked with previous inmates from prisons come and talk about his book with the former inmates, like harpists who live in the neighborhood come and play during Christmas. So we've, and lots of pop-up dinners, both people who want to come to, people who want to open restaurants eventually will initially use our spot as a storefront. And sometimes people who just want to try out, like one of our bakers wanted to have a dessert night. So we've had a lot of those kind of evening events too.
Well, you guys have succeeded in creating a real cultural hub, a place where I think Richmond knows that whatever is going on is going to be worth checking out and when you open your doors, and that includes business every day. So on behalf of the American Center in Moscow, I just want to thank you, Evin, for being part of this and for telling us a little bit about your life and sharing who you are and what you do. And it's beautiful, and we're lucky to get to talk to you. My name is Laura Ann, and this is our Potluck Series. Thanks for joining us today.
Thank you, everyone, for listening. Thank you, Laura Ann.
Thanks, Evin. Merry Christmas.